speakers. Again, I'm going to ask for take a few moments to consider who you felt was the best speaker in that debate. Has everybody made their choice and cast their vote for the speakers, their preferred speakers in each debate? Is just so I know, procedurally wise, are their votes going to be collected separately now, or should I just go straight to the debate? Sorry? Now, okay, well, if we can collect those votes now then.
No, but I'm
Anyone need to I did it on.
It's more comfortable.
Any more votes?
Oh, yeah, I don't remember it. Okay.
Yeah.
Not here.
Yes, 1 minute.
Not here.
Just need a pen. Yes. And a piece of paper, so you have to talk it out.
Any more for any more?
Yeah.
Can't go there. So first of all, let me say thank you to all 8 of our speakers who I thought did a cracking job of coming up here, putting themselves on the line, putting their views out there, and showing the research they've done into these motions, and having a go at something that is a skill that I know is not regularly practiced. So that's, for that reason alone, let me thank all 8 speakers before we get any further. Thank you very much. Here's what's going to happen now. I'm going to give you my evaluation and tell you who I thought won each debate and why. And once I've finished that evaluation, I will hand over to Chuck here, who will tell you what the result was of the public vote. And we'll compare the two and see whether we both match up, whether there's any disparity. And if there is, of course, I'm happy to debate that with you after. We started off with this house believes that children should be gender neutral. Now what's really important in a debate like this is to start off with, first of all, the status quo. In other words, what is the situation right now? Is this statement accurate? Do we not live in a gender-neutral society at this moment in time? And then to move on from that to say, why is that a bad thing? Why is that harmful? Because ultimately you're going to need to demonstrate that if you're going to suggest that we change from living in a society that is not gender-neutral to one that is gender-neutral. So that's a task facing the proposition here in this particular debate. Now what we've got here is a great intro, a great demonstration of why we do not live in a gender-neutral society. I love the interactivity as well, and how the speaker was able to demonstrate that by actually getting you to prove yourselves that gender stereotypes exist in this day and age. That was brilliant. A great way of proving the existence of gender stereotypes, which means the first task, demonstrating the status quo exists, was completed. However, whilst we got a good explanation of where gender stereotyping comes from, and referring to things like fairy tales and how women always need to be rescued by man, and so on. What we didn't hear was why that was a bad thing. In other words, the analysis that we're looking for, or what I like to call the so what factor. Genders, in other words, our premise is here, we live in a society that is not gender neutral, so gender stereotypes exist, that's premise one, and it was well proven, a well-founded assumption. But what we were missing was premise two, which is, and that's bad for society because, which would lead us then to the conclusion, which is, therefore, we need to live in a gender neutral society. We were missing that second premise, which means all we got was, we live in a world of gender stereotypes, therefore we should move to one without gender stereotypes. That doesn't necessarily follow straight away, that would be that necessary course of action, because we haven't heard why living in a world of gender stereotypes is a bad thing in itself. On the opposition side, what we did get is we got a clear definition of a harm that would be caused by moving to a gender neutral society. I thought that was quite interesting. There were certainly some stereotypes and some tongue-in-cheek remarks thrown in there, but nevertheless, it was an interesting, again, assumption that was put forward there, said that identity is intricately tied to gender, and therefore a gender-neutral society will confuse children who are learning about themselves, so it is that therefore we should not move to a gender-neutral society. That was a well-made argument. What was also a well-made argument was how this wasn't the biggest problem society needed to face. Actually, the real problem the real problem that existed between the genders was pay disparity, the pay gap. We had that stat of 2/3 of women doing the world's work, but only receiving 1/10 of the world's income, and why this was more important. We had a hint there, although it wasn't taken all the way, that actually moving towards a gender-neutral society would obscure this and make it hard to solve this problem. It would have an extra impact if that had been said. However, nevertheless, it was still said this is a bigger problem than living in a gender stereotype society, which itself does not demonstrate to be a problem in the first place. One word of caution to the opposition, though, which is do beware of what we call the straw man logic of fallacy. Straw man literally means like a scarecrow, a man made of hay, in other words, a fake man. And what it means in basic terms is misrepresenting somebody's argument. The opposition was definitely guilty of heavily misrepresenting the proposition's argument by saying they were trying to create a society where men walk around in stilettos and have to refer to their children's it rather than him or her. Put the words in the person's mouth. He never once said that. He talked actually about how we have assumptions about which genders occupy which professions. And that was a really valid point. And what I was waiting for him to say, and that's bad because, but he never got that far. So for that reason, although he made a great case at the beginning, I gave that debate to the opposition speaker, in spite of her misrepresentation of his argument. She still made a very good case to why it would be harmful to move towards a gender-neutral society, which for me decided that particular debate. So, first debate went to the opposition. The second debate, I appreciate you take this on with a pinch of salt, because there was some misunderstanding about who's going to be speaking in favour and who's going to be speaking against. Fair enough. And I take my hat off to both our speakers for actually still making the effort to defend the positions they were assigned, even though it would have been much easier to defend the positions they had researched and just simply switch. I commend that. I thought that I'm really glad they did that. They made that effort because that was also a great demonstration of an attempt at impromptu debating. So I'm very thankful to both speakers for doing so. So what I'm going to do is, rather than look at who made which case, because technically speaking, they were kind of both defending the proposition in that argument. I'd rather look at the way they structured their arguments. So the first one, it was a very well illustrated argument, and certainly there was a clear definition there of what space tourism was, or what space exploration was. In this case, space exploration equals space tourism. It means being able to fly to Australia in 2 hours or go to the moon for afternoon tea. That much was made clear. There are certainly alternative definitions you can make for space exploration. If you are certainly not trying to make a case in favour of space exploration, then the main definitions you can take, which can also be used in a debate like this. They might just for the record that space exploration isn't just about space tourism. Space exploration could also be the International Space Station. Space exploration could be the launch of satellite communication systems. Space exploration, sending out probes to asteroids that can technically impact the Earth. There are lots of ways to define space exploration just for future reference. But we've got a definition now. The issue was that after that we moved into the area of subjective opinion. So I wasn't given any reason to believe why I would come to the same conclusion if just presented with this information that the only function of space exploration is to go to the moon for afternoon tea, and that's a waste of money because there are better things to do. All I need to oppose that case is to say, well, actually, I personally think that's a great idea. At which point I've presented the valid argument in response. So we need further criteria to say why it would be impossible for me to really disagree with that without showing there's a better case against that. And that's what we got, in fairness, from the other speaker, who said, actually, we have bigger problems that we need to focus on here at home. Exploding population, a finite scarcity of resources that need to be shared out. We need to invest our money in solving problems down here, therefore we shouldn't be spending that money on space exploration. So that at least was moving us closer towards setting a criteria for making a decision on how we prioritise funding, and why, if we apply that same criteria ourselves, we would also arrive at the conclusion that it's more important to spend money here on serious social problems than spending it on space tourism, as which is in the definition there. So in that case, I had to go with the opposition speaker for making a case that I felt I could also apply myself and come to the same conclusion independently of my own This House believes political stability is a higher priority than free speech in emerging democracy. Now, the key word here was emerging democracy, which is slightly overlooked in this debate, because then we've got a very generic set of arguments about why free speech leads to genocide, full stop. And it was a slightly difficult case to make. However, examples were cited, so the assumption, again, the premises put forward, let's not forget premises, the premise put forward is that free speech, unfettered free speech, leads to hate speech. And hate speech leads to genocide, as in the cases of Yugoslavia, Rwanda, and Nazi Germany. And therefore, in order to prevent genocide from happening, we must curb free speech. That was the argument put forward. Now, of course, undoubtedly, this is why I urge you to focus purely on the arguments put by the speakers, rather than your own interpretation of them. I'm sure we could probably find a few examples of some democracies that had free speech that had led to genocide. However, that's not our job. That's the opposition speaker's job. And the issue there was that that case wasn't made. There was an attempt to deny that the countries that involved in the genocides mentioned were emerging democracies, but there wasn't any rebuttal of that theory which said free speech leads to hate speech, leads to genocide, therefore we should curb free speech. There was no analysis or rebuttal of that particular logic. And unless that is challenged, unless that assumption is challenged, then the conclusion remains valid. And therefore, the proposition in that particular debate, despite some valid points and some points made by the opposition about the importance of free speech to participating in democracy and the right guaranteed to all nations of free speech by the UN, although not enforceable, of course. Ultimately, what we had was genocide versus participatory democracy, preventing genocide versus a participatory democracy. At which point, if you're asked to choose between which is a bigger harm there, I'd probably say that genocide is a bigger harm than not having as much free speech or as many political parties there, unless, of course, you were to argue that not having those things in place, not having political parties in place, not having free speech in a democratic election would make the risk of genocide more likely, not less likely. So in this case, I had to go to the proposition speaker simply because the fundamental assumptions underlying the conclusion were not challenged, and therefore they were able to demonstrate that free speech led to genocide without being questioned on the other side. This has to do with money can't buy happiness. I did empathise with the opposition speaker on this one. I admit, first of all, going up against a psychologist, I had no idea. And secondly, that motion, I thought to myself, how would I go about trying to oppose that if I were in their shoes? And I probably found that more difficult than any of the other three motions, especially the very robust case put forward by the opposition speaker. What I really liked about the opening case was pretty much did everything that I asked at the very beginning. So it was well introduced, saying what this debate was about, a definition of happiness and how hard it is to define it in the first place, and also a definition of the key of what this debate was about, which was how do you go about resolving a lack of happiness or restoring happiness in people's lives, and then it finished with, again, a nice summary of what have I told you this debate is about, whether money can help bring happiness, address unhappiness, bring happiness back in people's lives, and why actually the solutions to addressing unhappiness and restoring happiness lie in things like exercise and talking therapies, just talking with friends and family, which themselves cost not a penny, and therefore money is not required in order to address the causes of unhappiness. Well, that's a very well-made case, and the opposition did try have a stab, in fairness, at making a rebuttal of that. For example, they mentioned the point that going to that taking exercise might require to go to the gym, which itself would cost money. So it's not entirely their point being that actually even taking up those solutions, which is supposed to be free, could cost money. But of course you see that it was a difficult one to oppose there. What you really wanted to do though, in terms of addressing that, is that you weren't looking to prove that money actually could buy happiness. That if only we had loads of money, we would all be really happy. You didn't even need to prove necessarily that the solutions provided, such as taking exercise, such as talking to people, were invalid or would not bring happiness. It's perfectly possible and feasible that those things could bring happiness, because that wasn't the motion. The motion was this house believes money can't buy happiness. And the one thing that the proposition didn't do, but the only thing it didn't do in fairness, was otherwise a great speech, was to say why not only would you prefer to do these things like taking exercise and talking to people to address your unhappiness, but why if you were to try to use money instead, acquire a vast amount of wealth or use your fortune if you had one, why that would fail to address those particular causes of that unhappiness. And if that had been brought up by the opposition, and if they'd said, you know what, you proved your case that actually those things can bring happiness and restore happiness, but you haven't proved that money can't, then you would have had a fighting chance at winning that debate. But it was still very difficult to oppose because it was so well proposed in the first place. So for that one, I had to give it to the opposition for that speaker for that debate. What I want to say as a final thought here is I could tell that I was listening to the Toastmasters debating game. Because I come from an academic debating background where the emphasis is all content, and I used to judge competitions at university where you have people making the most insightful analyses into the causes of water shortages in South America and their effects on the economic independence of those countries and how that affected American foreign policy. But they do so whilst holding their notes in front of their faces, and so I couldn't see them speaking at a million miles per hour, so that even if they did actually propose a genuinely valid solution that could bring about world peace, I would have been capable of understanding it because they were speaking so fast. That's the background that I come from. What I loved about these debates is the quality of the delivery, which is something that's often underestimated in debating circles, where because we spend so much time thinking about how well you are proving your case or disproving your opponent's case, we overlook sometimes the importance of your audience actually being able to understand what it is you're saying in the first place, and being able to engage with you and empathise with you, being able to identify with you, you being able to connect with your audience and read the mood of your audience by making eye contact with them, to express your case with vigour and memorable through your use of hand gestures, through your alternating tone and pitch, and all these things that Toastmasters are so great at. That really came across, and that's something that many debaters could do, taking a lead perhaps of the Toastmasters book for that one. So I was massively impressed by the quality of the delivery as well as the valid attempts to actually also make sure that the content is at the same level as the quality of the delivery is. Thank you, all of you, who spent tonight to
Before we have our final count, I'd just like to have our general evaluator for this evening, Kate McNeely, to evaluate the whole meeting. Can we please welcome Kate McNeely.
What a night. Aren't you glad that you were here and not